The story takes place in a world where Umbra are monsters or fairy tales born from human fear and anxiety. A young girl arrives to study abroad in modern-day London, only to be caught in a bizarre incident as she enters university. In a city with no acquaintances, the helpless girl wanders into Café Forbidden, a mysterious cafe that houses a group of handsome men known as the Twilight Guardians, designated to protect the boundary that the humans in Umbra convene. But it's here the girl learns the ring she inherited from her great-grandmother who lived 100 years ago had ties to this place. After arriving at the London airport, Beilu Ton changes into her school uniform while her friend Mu Xinyao uses her app to navigate to their apartment. However, it told her before she even asked for some reason. Ignoring that though, Beilu is excited her dream of coming here finally happened. Riding the train, Mu mentions that tomorrow, they need to buy basic necessities and register for school. There's only 2 weeks until the entrance ceremony, so they'll be really busy preparing. However, Beilu ignores her to marvel at the city of London, a place her great-grandmother had loved. Beilu was thankful for Mu as well, since she was the one who gave the push for studying abroad. The two were the best of friends. Arriving at their stop, Beilu twirled within the city that was so cool and old-fashioned. But as they began heading to their apartment, little did they know something transparent was following them from behind. Almost making it there in the evening, this thing swipes their luggages and Beilu's ring from right under them. Mu couldn't see it, but Beilu could for some reason, so she chased after. Along the way, Beilu shouted, "Thief!" and for someone to catch the thing, but wondered why no one was responding. The thing ran through an interesting man who caught the ring that was stolen from Beilu, and thought of the thing as an annoying, uncivilized beast. Then, when Beilu rushed by, he hinted at his familiarity towards the ring. Reaching a dark alleyway, Beilu only realized now she'd left Mu behind. So, she wrote on a piece of paper and casted a spell that would guide her after 6 throws of it as a paper plane. She followed it into a cafe, walking through a magic mirror where Vlad caught it. Vlad wanted to know who she was, but more importantly, how she was able to cross the mirror. Then, after further inspection, Vlad's eyes glimmered, knowing this girl must be related to Regen. But then, Luke chopped the back of Vlad's head, telling Vlad to decide if he's interrogating or seducing her. Toru then introduced himself and welcomed Beilu as the descendant of their lord Regen. With the cafe closed for the night, the cafe workers learned Sha Regen was Beilu's great-grandmother. Beilu was surprised to hear they knew of her great-grandmother since she passed away nearly 100 years ago. Vlad was about to reveal how he felt remorse for not being able to protect her back then, so Luke had to quickly make an excuse saying Regen was the first owner of this cafe. Luke then showed Beilu a picture of Café Forbidden with Regen standing front, claiming she opened this cafe so misfits like them from all over London could work here. Now Beilu understood why this spell had guided her here. Luke then introduced the 3 of them a little more. He opened with Vlad as a lazy guy who couldn't do anything except make tea. Then Toru, who was also from China just like Beilu, and then himself as the super chef and backbone of the cafe. After the intros, Beilu explained her situation, describing her thief as blurry and fuzzy. Now saying it out loud, she assumed she wasn't making much sense. However, they all knew exactly what she was talking about. The 3 boys determined it to be a goblin, which tend to infest the city around this time of year. And learning the general location where the items were stolen, they knew of the city park where a goblin den may lie. So, they went on their way to Hyde Park. Without explaining much to Beilu at all, Beilu caught a taxi to follow, and running into the park, she came across Hazen, who pointed her in the direction of where the 3 boys went. But before she could take off, he gave her back her ring, and told her to wear it so she doesn't lose it again. When she caught up to the boys, Vlad stomped open a tree that held various stolen items, and revealed a goblin out of its invisibility. However, it wasn't just one, it seemed there was a family of them. Vlad then took off, leaving the small fry to his 2 friends. Luke became wolf-like and tore the goblins apart, while Toru summoned a Gatling gun and started shooting at the tree. Watching them take out the goblins was a little much for Beilu. Vlad then found a Spriggan leading the goblins. However, Beilu's call out to Vlad distracted him into getting struck. She tried to create an opening for Vlad to escape, and then with Toru and Luke arriving on the scene, they told her to flee. But, touching her shadow, the ring began to glow, and she suddenly pulled out chains. Vlad told her to use them with intuition, so she threw them and they entangled the Spriggan. This gave Vlad the opportunity to strike from behind and eliminate the monster completely. Luke found Belu's luggage with her scent, but right now, she was overwhelmed. Who were these guys? What were these powers she possessed? This was all too much. So, Vlad stared her in the eyes and overwrote her memories. He told her today she arrived in London, where thieves stole her luggage, and the police helped take care of things. She found herself sitting on a park bench in the morning, and excitedly explained her police chase to Mu. Back at the cafe, Luke questioned if changing Belu's memories was the right call, but Vlad insisted Regine wouldn't have wanted her great-granddaughter to get involved with Twilights like them. She should be a normal girl living her school life. However, arriving at her apartment, things were not at peace, because as Bailu opened her door, she heard the sound of a breaking window and Mu screaming. Ah! That's the sound of me screaming when someone doesn't like this video and subscribe to my channel. Look, on my Shoujo Weekly, you can find plenty of stories involving action, romance, and drama. Ooh, I love the drama. You can also talk about anime with me on my live streams, where I'll sometimes sing and do other cool things. So come on, hit that subscribe, I'll be your guy. As the news blares about people disappearing due to a modern-day Jack the Ripper, Luke and Toru are about to head out for the day. Luke questions if Vlad still has Belu on his mind, since he's been in deep thought for the past 2 hours. However, Vlad denies this. He then begins stripping, because he's decided to nap, but he wasn't expecting Belu to run in and stumble onto his chest. Belu was having an emergency, although Vlad thought she should apologize for touching him first. But she just completely ignored him, explaining her friend Mu was kidnapped. With yellow tape, the police and a crowd of people surround Belu's apartment. Luke and Toru confirmed the truth in her claims. Belu was getting antsy, wanting to rescue her friend. She bumped her head into the mirror and learned she couldn't just leave whenever she wanted. Vlad told her to let his friends handle this, since they were more capable. More importantly though, he wanted to know how she remembered him. When she thought back to their faces being close together, she got flush red. It was clear Belu had no clue, so Vlad hypothesized it to be a property of Regen's blood, or maybe the shock from Mu getting kidnapped. The reason didn't matter anymore though. He decided to ask for all the information she had on Mu so they could track her down, and the fact that Vlad disregarded her feelings on her attempted memory wipe really annoyed her. Back at the apartment, Luke flagged down the active detective who knew him, and inside, Detective Gregory told the two to hurry up before people got suspicious. Gregory knew the kidnapping wasn't the work of a human, given the kidnapper escaped with the victim through the back window on the 4th floor. The scratches on the building are nothing Gregory could report to his superiors, but he did suspect the kidnapper to be a wolfman like Luke. Regardless, the detective thought of it as strange to be the work of a shadow. Why would a shadow act in the middle of the day? Why would they go after a foreign student who just arrived in London? Outside the building, Luke and Toru determined this was not the work of a goblin or a Spriggan, since the shadow seemed to be more intelligent. On the other side of the phone call, Vlad assumed the commotion caused by the goblins made them notice. Bailu asked what had been noticed, only to be answered by an unfamiliar boyish voice that said, "That you've arrived in London." Bailu was surprised. However, Vlad told Wayne to stay out of this. Wayne didn't think hiding things would help the situation. He tried to explain to Bailu only for Vlad to hang up. This didn't stop Wayne though, as he began speaking through the radio. He was apparently a ghost that haunts Café Forbidden. Vlad and Wayne explained that non-human entities like themselves were called Umbra. Some people refer to them as shadows. They're born from human fear and anxiety, like a child who woke up during the night imagining demons or monsters from the shadows of their room. The monsters are born there. Luke is a descendant of the werewolves from fairytales, though currently he's a lone wolf broken away from the pack. Toru is a Jiangshi, an undead corpse from Chinese folklore. After coming to life in China, he accompanied Regine here and has been around since the 19th century. Wayne apparently is even older than that, but his memory and existence is hazy, which is why he doesn't have a physical body. 6 months ago, Vlad picked him up while he was just a consciousness inside an abandoned doll. Then, as Vlad began to proudly explain what he was, Belu got a phone call from Mu, which they had already known was confiscated by the police. On the other side, they told her to locate Mu as soon as possible. While Hazen was having dinner, we learned he had Chris kidnap Mu to awaken Regen's blood inside of Belu. However, Chris didn't like what creature Hazen had stuck Mu with, and when she woke up, unable to recall being kidnapped, a mannequin sliced her cheek. In the evidence lockers, Gregory called Vlad in because he couldn't enter buildings without being invited. Vlad needed Mu's phone for something. Back at the cafe, Belu was irritated because Vlad left her in his room. She didn't know much about Umbra or shadows, but judging by his room, she thought he was a total shut-in. She freaked out, wanting to search for Mu, and then wondered what this interesting thing was in the center of the room, until her phone rang. Where the boys were at, they had Wayne unlock Mu's phone. Inside, Wayne found a magic mirror app that's designed to predict a person's thoughts based on their usage and conversation history to give them advice. But then, Wayne noticed Belu was using her app to track down Mu while she was being attacked, making them wonder if this app was the work of an Umbra. Wayne then made a call to Belu to tell her to escape, but above, she heard Mu scream, then a pillar fell towards her. Mu was backed into the wall, with the mannequin ready to kill her, but Belu was able to hold down the mannequin as they fell down the stairs together. She narrowly dodged some throwing knives and threw another mannequin to distract the assailant. Belu continued to run, but got caught off guard as the attacker jumped at her from the side, pushing her off the upper floor. But luckily, she was caught by Wayne. He tried to pull her up, but his hand slipped off because he was just inhabiting another mannequin, so she fell into some cushions. The attacker jumped down to meet her, and noticing her phone ringing, Belu rolled away from another knife attack and picked up her phone, inviting Vlad in. He swarmed in through a gust of bats appearing before her. He then caught a knife attack and revealed the mannequin to be Jack the Ripper, the serial killer who once terrorized London. He pushed Jack away and revealed himself to be Bram Stoker's exquisitely crafted Count Dracula. With Jack going for another attack, the Count quickly hit him with a barrage of blows and blew Jack back all the way through the building. And outside, Chris appeared and finished Jack off for trying to kill Mu. He then apologized for scaring her and swore to protect Mu from now on. Outside, the protagonists found Mu nowhere in sight and contemplated on what to do next. Back at the cafe, Wayne played an old film detailing Rijan's history. Known as the strongest Umbra hunter, she became internationally famous after she fought and killed Count Dracula. But isn't that Vlad? She was accompanied by a powerful Jiang Shi, and while she could have been every Umbra's worst nightmare, her philosophy was different from others because she sought to coexist with the Umbra. A world where humans and shadows could eventually coexist peacefully was the guiding principle for Rijan and the Twilight organization she founded with her allies. She established Café Forbidden so humans could become accustomed to Umbra, and if Belu wanted to learn more, she could always check Rijan's study on the top floor. However, Belu couldn't keep up. Learning her great-grandmother was the leader of such a questionable organization, Vlad clarified that their organization wasn't bad, because unlike 100 years ago, they now have international support with ties to governments and law enforcement in various countries. But just like there are those who seek harmony between humans and Umbra, there are those who only seek prosperity for the Umbra alone, and sow confusion amongst humans. There are many who hated Rijan as well, thus making Belu their target. Learning this weighed on Belu, given her best friend was kidnapped because of her family lineage. To cheer her up, Luke then provided her some spaghetti, because who can think properly on an empty stomach? He and Vlad then began bickering, because there's garlic in it and well, Vlad is a vampire. Rip. Supposedly though, he hasn't drank blood in the last 100 years, arguing nutritionally it's no different than seawater. Elsewhere, Chris was serving Mu the same kind of spaghetti. The guy who taught him only cooked by feeling and ratio, which is Asian style by the way, I would know. So he assumed she wouldn't like it, but she enjoyed it, being so hungry. Outside the cafe, Luke comes out to comfort Belu, given she hasn't slept in 2 days. She tries to play it off by saying her jet lag disappeared, but Luke knows she still feels at fault for Mu's capture. He knows the more others protect her, the more it hurts. The more she's told she's not responsible, the more she feels responsible. Belu was taken aback that Luke was so understanding. He understood she wished people would leave her alone, because all the attention makes her want to tell people she'll decide for herself if it's her fault. She wondered if she could really interpret this as him trying to cheer her up, instead of just trying to hit on her though. To which he eagerly replied, "Of course. I don't go after weakened girls. The real battle begins once you've recovered," making her giggle. He then promised as a friend to rescue Mu. However, Beilu was determined to rescue her herself, causing the two to laugh together with a mood lighter now. That night, Vlad looked outside, spotting Luke running in wolf form. He scurried onto a rooftop to cry out under the full moon, and this perked up Chris's ears. The two brothers then met in front of a Ferris wheel, where Moo watched them from the inside. Chris had promised to release Moo in exchange for Beilu, but of course, Luke wasn't gonna hand her over. Luke questioned why Chris was getting humans involved, considering they were exiled by their fellow wolfkind. Luke didn't see it that way though. He felt they were only exiled because of their ties to humans. He didn't hate humans though, just Luke. As the two began fighting, Luke offered his brother peace and to come to the cafe, but Chris still refused. About to continue the battle, Luke suddenly found himself surrounded by enemy Umbra, but this was not Chris's intention at all. He wanted Heishin to stay out of the way, but Heizhen wanted this useless battle to end so they could go back to trying to capture Beilu. He commanded the dogs to attack, but then they suddenly got wiped out by a bullet barrage, courtesy of Toru. Beilu then got in front of Luke to say she wasn't going to let him get hurt any further. Chris then went on the offense, but got deflected away quickly by a shield Beilu pulled from her shadow. Vlad then made it to the scene, explaining that even though Luke tried to lose them and deal with this on his own, Vlad's bats used echolocation to track down their howling. Now Vlad and Toru planned to handle the grunts, while giving Luke the chance to go all out on his brother. Beilu went to search for Moo, who shouted out near the top of the Ferris wheel. Luke refused to kill his brother because he loved peace, but this is the very reason Chris thought they should all die. He believed Umbra would trouble the humans, and no matter how many times Luke offered peace, Chris refused, unwilling to accept the Twilights. He climbed up the pillar of the Ferris wheel chasing after Moo. Vlad attempted to rescue her, but Chris was just a bit faster, taking her and escaping across the water. In battle against a Jiangshi known as the ultimate weapon, Rijan easily defeated and subdued him with a talisman. She didn't want him to continue harming others and harming himself. We turned back to Moo, being pulled onto a boat by Chris. Oh, she's having a romance plot with her captor. That's where this is going, huh? He even got her a cute hat, and began taking her to a secret hideout no one knew about since he couldn't trust Heizhen anymore. But Heizhen was always watching. Back at the cafe, Beilu was studying hard in Rijan's old room. She went downstairs to take a break, since it was getting late, detailing her overwhelming study of folklore from all places and ages, and historical weapons. To help her relax, Chris served her a vanilla ice cream affogato, making Vlad jealous since he had already served her tea. She enjoyed the coffee ice cream thoroughly, but Toru found her behavior problematic. He told her spoons shouldn't be held in her mouth, and her hairstyle and clothing wasn't presentable in the presence of others. Rijan always dressed properly and held a graceful presence. The other boys then jumped in, adding Rijan was proper even in battle, acknowledging Beilu looked the same, but her behaviors were totally off. And this embarrassed her into frustration so badly, she fell off of her chair and knocked over her glass. Toru caught her, but unfortunately the glass broke under his immense grip. Getting up, Beilu panicked, seeing Toru's hand, but he attempted to downplay any issues, since technically he was just a tool. Still though, she chose to bandage his hand, but Toru felt bad for the stain on her outfit. Thus, the two decided to go shopping together. While the two went on their little date, the boys decided to spy on her via a drone Wayne controlled. As the two walked together, Beilu asked about the talisman over Toru's face, and he explained that Rijan gave it to him so he could control himself, but he couldn't see through it at all. Beilu was quite surprised, but Toru didn't like that she looked at him that way with a face that resembled his old master. And man, were the boys back at the cafe cracking up over this. Then suddenly, some shadow birds came to attack, so Toru quickly shot them into nothing. More came, so he continued shooting, but he was caught off guard when a bigger one picked up Beilu. Then, a flurry of birds rained down on him and pinned him down. Beilu was rescued by Luke and Vlad. The Twilights getting in the way was always troublesome for Heizhen's schemes, but this wasn't going to stop his plan for Toru to revert back to his old form. Luke freed Toru, but noticed his talisman burning away on the ground. Toru then went feral, with his wounds healing and now firing at his friends. As Vlad took Beilu away, he explained Toru was an Umbra weapon designed to rampage behind enemy lines before eventually exploding. He'll attack anything that moves. Vlad was worried about Belu using her powers to solve this, since it came at a cost. But they were in need, so he told her to imagine what she wanted and make a strong wish. The ring should respond to that. They eventually led him to an abandoned warehouse, where Belu gave Luke a new talisman to suppress Toru's powers. Placing it on him, Luke narrowly escaped a grenade thanks to Vlad's help. But the talisman failed, so she had to make another one with a different wish. They tried again with Vlad using his Chinese martial arts to clear the way for Belu, but unfortunately, she tripped, giving Toru clear aim at her. He stopped momentarily seeing his old master, giving Belu the chance to place the talisman right on him. He remembered that time when Rijan gave him solace. She had known Heizin created him with the purpose of being a weapon, but she just didn't see him that way, and neither did Belu. The memories made Toru shed a tear. Belu didn't think of him as a weapon, but instead placed a talisman that gave him a heart as a friend. So back at the cafe, as friends, Toru was determined to help her change her clothes? Oh, he was just trying to fix her ribbon. He wanted to help her with matters concerning her appearance from now on. Later, they gave Belu a store outfit, but she wasn't just an employee there. They made her their manager, which was certainly a shock to Belu. Two boys entered an abandoned hospital, exploring with the rumors of it being haunted with a ghost. They then heard a sudden crash, and with a glowing pumpkin coming their way, they fled screaming. It was thrown by Chris, who wanted to keep the place abandoned as their hideout. But the pumpkin started moving, becoming an Umbra through the imaginative fears of the two boys. With the little jack-o'-lantern hiding out of fear, Moo approached it, telling the little Umbra not to be scared and take her hand. Chris warned her, though, that nothing ever came good from Umbra and humans associating with each other. At the cafe, Vlad read the newspaper headline of famous singer Roland Lee being hospitalized due to a romantic scandal, until Belu came out twirling in her new manager outfit. Vlad scoffed at her, so she scolded him, saying he's supposed to compliment her even if he has to lie. In response, claiming this was a lie, he told her the outfit looked good on her, and that she's supremely beautiful right now. But still, she felt acknowledged. Belu then explained her parents wanted her to go to school in China, but she defied their wishes by coming here, and she wanted to pay for her own tuition anyways. But she didn't know what a manager did. That's when Vlad explained her duties are interacting with customers, setting tables, shopping, taking out the garbage, and washing dishes. They then served a guest for the day, who knew the secret password to enter the private room behind the mirror. Belu served her first customer, Lydia, who wanted the Twilights to help her find a gentleman who could make her heart flutter. She was confused since they were supposed to handle requests involving Umbra, but that's when Vlad came in to explain Lydia was in fact a Yenanshi. Belu then took on the job, feeling romantic requests were wonderful. Oh man. Well, Lydia left her preferences of tall, with well-defined features, enjoys an occasional drink, possesses talent and passion for arts, and blood type 0. However, the boys explained in Irish folklore, Lydia is known as a fairy lover that enters relationships with humans. It is said they offer wisdom and beauty to young artists, poets, musicians, and writers, but the men who devote themselves to her will only find madness and death. So unfortunately, Belu just took on a job to help Lydia find the perfect victim. She wanted to now turn Lydia down, but also unfortunately, it's their cafe's policy to not reverse any jobs they accept. So, Vlad knew just the man who fit Lydia's desires. We moved to Lydia's request completion date, where the crew invited Detective Gregory. He laughed pleasantly seeing Lydia's beauty, but quickly turned displeased, realizing she's an Umbra. He got up quickly because he had to head back to work, but even he knew that from every fairy tale in the world, Umbra and humans could never be happy together. This one didn't work out, but Wayne was determined to find her a new match. Everyone tried cheering Lydia up, until the famous singer who was hospitalized came into the shop, already knowing who Lydia was. In the changing room, Wayne explained he searched all the images to find a perfect match based on her description. They're apparently exes who've been dating for over 5 years now. Roland was at a loss because she suddenly left him, but she didn't want to hurt him anymore. He didn't care about what the tabloids said about them, but he was misunderstanding. She just didn't want to take his life. She then ran out of the shop and Belu went after her. Back inside, Roland spoke of how the two of them had met before he was famous. They fell in love together at first sight, and he was so surprised she suddenly wanted to end things. Outside, Belu realized the reason Lydia wanted a new man to fall in love with is so she could stop hurting Roland. Even if they were apart, as long as they loved each other, she'd continue to passively sap his vitality. Lydia knew it was wrong. Not only did she fall in love with a human as an Umbra, but she never wanted to take his life. She asked Belu to kill her and end it all, but Belu still wanted to find another way. Lydia was willing to accept this, but only if Belu would kill her if her plan failed. Belu tried researching in Rijan's study, but when the time came, there was still no solutions. Then, Vlad came in with Roland, who was informed from all the boys about what kind of creature Lydia really was. Lydia slapped Vlad for interfering, but Vlad accepted this as a man first and an Umbra second. Lydia then ran out with Roland chasing after her. Belu wanted to help, but Vlad told her not to, asking her if she ever had something more valuable than her own life. That's the situation Roland was in now. Roland caught up to Lydia, trying to embrace her as she tried to push him away. Before learning the truth, he thought she just didn't like the media, so he was willing to even give up singing for her. But even knowing her existence was hurting him, he didn't care. Even one more minute, even one more second, he just wanted to be with the woman he loved. Dying right in her arms, he told Lydia he'd love her forever. But then, Belu arrived to fulfill her promise. Roland wanted to die loving her, but instead, Lydia sacrificed herself with her last words being, she'd love him forever and ever, as she faded into a dust of light before his very eyes. Later, Belu sat depressed at the table under the weight of her decisions. She didn't regret her actions, but wondered still if there was a better answer. There was still some light to this, with Toru explaining the tool Belu had used was one that transformed Umbra she wanted to save into amethyst, which was now a jewel Roland would always wear on his ring finger. The two cannot communicate or see each other, but the souls can always be together. This was the best thing Belu could have done for them. Belu then asked if it was really so difficult for Umbra and humans to love each other. So, Vlad told her not to worry about it, and instead came in for a kiss, telling her she could try for herself. But he was just playing, and that left her flush red. The story of Roland ends with him performing his new hit single, Fairy Lover, where he expresses his emotions, first meeting Lydia as a street performer, and going everywhere with the woman he loved. In another location, Van Helsing was using security footage to spot a pumpkin Umbra, a wolfman in the reflection of some bottles. He then commanded his assault team to organize for departure in 15 minutes. To try figuring out where Chris had taken Moo, Belu was researching urban legends with Wayne's help. The two came upon the little pumpkin wearing Moo's hat, so now they knew where to find her. Moo was feeding the pumpkin spaghetti, and as Chris was about to eat, he suddenly got up, realizing they'd been surrounded. The Twilight boys were arguing about how to deal with Chris, until they noticed a helicopter fly towards the building. Seeing Moo and Chris get taken away, Luke went after them, but he couldn't reach. Vlad tried pursuing with his bats, but was thrown off with an anti-radar chaff. He wondered how the captors had known about his bat powers. Reaching base, Van Helsing told Moo she'd been brainwashed by the Umbra, and told her he'd save her. And later, Van Helsing tortured Chris. But with Van learning his organization's ally Hae-Zin was the one who made Chris kidnap Moo, he wanted Chris to explain everything he knew. Chris was fine with it, as long as Van promised Moo would be safe. Van responded that it'd be no issue, because his organization, the Midnight Sun, was designed to protect humans. Back at the cafe, the gang was trying to figure out who took Chris and Moo. Wayne figured with the expensive helicopter and resources, they must be involved with the magic mirror app. And that's when Van Helsing walked right into Café Forbidden. They were wondering who he was, so he introduced himself as a man who's fought beings like them countless times throughout history. He's Van Helsing the 13th. Van explained to Belu that Umbra were first properly recognized during World War I, where the humans fought due to confusion caused by Umbra. His organization, the Midnight Sun, was founded on the idea of purging human society of Umbra and exterminating them. However, after the World War ended, the world began to desire harmony towards Umbra. The Twilights gained power and Midnight Sun fell into the minority and hid underground. Van Helsing considered that a humiliating time, but in the past 3 years, he established Snowmary, the company that created the Magic Mirror app, then poured all the technology and funds he acquired back into Midnight Sun. He did apologize for his technical involvement in getting Moo kidnapped by Chris, and promised to return her. That evening, Bailu asked Vlad if they could really trust Van, since he promised to give Mu back on the condition she never returned to the cafe or deal with Umbra ever again. Vlad could never trust him, but he knew Van Helsing was incredibly loyal to humanity, and Vlad was willing to let Bailu go if this would allow her to live a normal life. At an abandoned warehouse, Van called Luke to come out. He knew Luke had been following him the entire time. Luke came alone since he didn't want to involve anyone else. He just wanted to know Chris's location. The two began to fight, with someone watching them from a drone above. Chris was wary, dodging the silver bullets knowing they could really harm him. He eventually caught Van by the neck, but this was all going according to Van's plan, because above them dropped Monk's Hood, also known as Wolf's Bane. It's poisonous to them. With Chris struggling to move, Van fired a decisive shot. Toru, having gone after Chris, got a message from Van to come alone. The two then engaged in a fight at the warehouse, where Van struggled because a doll like Toru had no real weakness. But firing a shot from his cane, Van released a container holding liquid nitrogen, freezing Toru solid. This means Vlad was the only one left who could fight. Bailu is let in by security, where Mu has been held up in the Snowmary Tower, and the two have a heartwarming reunion. Vlad then took his offensive stance, which Van recognized as Chinese martial arts. He knew the art's philosophy was developed so the weak could defend themselves against the strong, and was disgusted a creature as powerful as Vlad would use it. Vlad corrected Van, stating that as a vampire, he still had many limitations and weaknesses. Then, from above, came a Holy Cross spear for Van, one of the exact weaknesses Vlad was referring to. Back at the Snowmary Tower, Mu explained since being here, she's been treated kind and courteously with a clean bed and plenty of food. Before hiding out with Chris, her meals and sleeping conditions were crude, but she felt much safer then than she does now. Hearing that, Bailu told Mu it was time to get out of here, with Chris as well. She told the guards this, and Backup, who was observing the entire operation, was getting quite annoyed from all the work he had to do. Bailu wasn't allowed to leave until Van finished eliminating the Twilight Umbra. However, Bailu had complete confidence in her friends, and using Wayne, who was on her phone, she breached the door's security and made her escape with Mu. Backup suspected something like this would happen and reported it to Van, but Van told him to use his head and figure it out. This frustrated Backup enough to hang up and let Van finish his fight on his own. It didn't matter though, since Van had already pinned Vlad against a wall. Just kidding, Vlad seemed to be doing just fine, minus the blood dropping. He was aware Van's puppeteer had now abandoned him. He figured Van's boss from above had been observing and analyzing the fight, while always providing him the best strategies and weapons. Van was irritated, shouting that he's his own boss, leading all of them, to which Vlad clapped back with, "Nah, you're a puppet. It's sad. Your predecessors are rolling in their graves." Vlad then pulled out the spear, and was perfectly fine, causing Van to panic a bit and ask Backup for assistance, only getting no response. Down below, Luke and Toru had just finished cleaning up, having freed themselves from their precarious positions earlier. Van had made the mistake of leaving his underlings to deal with him, since they weren't nearly as strong or as talented as he was. Back at the Snowmary Tower, the girls were having Wayne locate Chris, who was still captive in the 4th floor basement, and unfortunately, they were on the 85th floor. Luke then called Bailu and received a map from Wayne so he could rescue Chris and the rest of them. But before Wayne could return to Bailu's phone, he got locked in the server he was hacking by Backup, who trapped him with an antivirus program. Backup then deleted Wayne, blocking off any additional guidance. Security then started banging at the door, so it was time for Bailu and Mu to use the escape route Wayne left them. As they were chased through the halls, Bailu used her ring to summon a rock wall to impede the guards. The girls continued their run, and a streak of Bailu's hair suddenly became red. Luke made it to Chris, who had basically no desire to escape. Chris believed if he stayed, Mu would be able to live a normal life. However, Luke told him that was nonsense, and convinced Chris to hear how Mu feels about him before he makes a decision like that. Vlad smacked Van Helsing with a flurry of attacks before laying him out. Van accepted his defeat and asked for an honorable death. But Vlad had no interest in dealing the final blow. As Vlad left, Van began tearing up and shouted, crying at his shameful defeat. Bailu busted through a door using her powers, but it was exhausting her. They made it to another room, where Backup began firing lasers at them. However, he wasn't expecting all his PCs to suddenly blow up. They were saved by Wayne, but he didn't seem like the innocent boy he was before. This new being was much more devilish, and explained he erased Wayne's memories and hid within his mind. His true form was known as the demonic Lord of Gluttony. The building began crumbling all over because of Wayne, so Chris slugged Luke to avoid falling debris, and Luke leg-sweeped Chris right back to avoid the next set of rocks. But really, they just wanted excuses to hit each other. Bailu got up after much of the building's destruction and found Wayne back in her phone, perfectly normal. She was so worried about him. They then got a call from Luke, who was relieved to hear she was safe. He passed the phone to Chris, and hearing his voice, Mu was glad as well. There was no peace, however, with Hae-Jin entering the scene. He revealed himself to be the mastermind who orchestrated Mu's kidnapping to attract Bailu. Seeing him through the phone, Luke told the girls to run because they stood no chance against him. He then jumped through the window and began climbing up, but Bailu tried to combat the man anyways. He commended her strength having grown accordingly, and summoned Jack the Ripper to deal with them. It looked like Jack was going for Bailu, but that was just a ruse because his real target was Mu, and after getting pierced, she fell from the building where Chris caught her. Enraged, Bailu dragged Hae-Jin into Jack and started thrashing him as he laughed over her fantastic power. Falling over from defeating him, Vlad was able to catch her. Down below the tower, Chris was relieved that Mu was alright, but she couldn't stop crying over the death of the little jack-o'-lantern. She held it close, and for some reason, a vapor came from the pumpkin and healed her wounds. Bailu woke up to the boys looking at her, and she was exhausted from the power usage. Luke then came in after chatting with Chris, giving her the good news that Mu was safe. However, everyone was surprised to hear she didn't remember who Mu was. Outside the room, the boys were all trying to figure out what was wrong with Bailu. They concluded that due to the traumatic stress of thinking Mu died, her brain must have rejected her existence to protect itself. Bailu wondered why her body felt so heavy. She still had something important she needed to do and wanted to get up, but then wondered what that important thing was. She already finished enrolling into school. Was the important thing managing the cafe? No matter how hard she tried to think, it was no use. So she decided to rest some more. Later in the day, Vlad decided to take a break from work and visit her. He touched her hair and told her she could lean on him and his friends, and that he'd stay with her no matter who she becomes. Bailu got up, wondering if this was a confession. However, he just poked her head, telling her she was a century too young. Then, Luke took his break to visit her as well, giving her some dessert to eat. The two chatted, and Bailu assumed Luke was asking for relationship advice, when in actuality, he was explaining a metaphor for her having lost her memory, also hinting that he liked her at the same time. She wasn't interested in his advances and decided to lie in her sheets, making Luke want to flirt more, but it didn't really work. Toru visited Bailu next, giving her some new clothes she seemed to enjoy. He then brushed her hair, and this gave him flashbacks of his old master. Later that night, Chris and Mu were running away from pursuers. They got into a taxi where Chris told the driver to go anywhere as fast as he could. While riding away, Mu touched Chris's leg for comfort, but with the driver's magic mirror app going off, Chris ducked down with Mu, realizing their location had been found. He then told Mu to get out of the car and ran away, and Backup was annoyed his plan had been seen through. Hae-Jin then arrived, still recovering from his fight with Bailu. Backup showed Hae-Jin footage of where Van Helsing was struggling and cursing Vlad's name, but he didn't mean to show that screen. He meant to show Hae-Jin the interesting footage of Mu Shinyao's powers in action. Backup wanted to wager against Hae-Jin. Who would get stronger, Mu or Bailu? In a hideout, Chris could smell their pursuers had found them, so now they'd have to go somewhere else. Sitting down, he wondered why Mu was giggling, and turns out the jack-o'-lantern she absorbed was wishing her good luck. She then told Chris they should go to Café Forbidden. She believed that was their best shot, since Bailu had always helped her when she needed it. In the morning, Bailu woke up, realizing she had no time to waste. She came downstairs in her manager's outfit, thanking everyone for helping her, but she was ready to help Mu again. Doing his rounds outside a museum, a security guard is surprised to find one of the exhibits outside for some reason. Then, hearing a beastly sound, he is startled by a chimera-like beast behind him, and a flaming demon that came out of a lamp, so he ran, shouting for help. Backup asked Hae-Jin why he was scaring random Englishmen, but turns out he was just at the museum to create and retrieve more Umbra from the ideas of the creatures within the exhibits. Backup then reiterated it was his Mu versus Hae-Jin's Bailu, and whoever makes their pawn stronger gets to have both of them. Their philosophies on how they wanted to train the two girls were different, however. Hazen wanted Beilu to grow from throwing encounters her way, while Backup wanted to grow Mu by capturing her and training her independently. Detective Gregory entered Café Forbidden, but no one was happy to see him since they were hoping it was Mu. Gregory was taking it like, "What did I do? I'm just a customer here." But really, he wanted to know why the entire area was surrounded by men in black. Luke then explained they started showing up after Chris called him, saying he and Mu were finally coming to the cafe. Their phone lines had been tapped, and despite Luke and Chris only speaking in Wolf, their messages were deciphered. Gregory then got a sudden work call, notifying him of monsters being spotted at a museum. So, the gang went over and Vlad immediately erased the memories of all the guards who had seen the Umbra. That way, they could continue their normal lives. The night Umbra then appeared, so they engaged in battle. Beilu used her chains to pierce it immediately, and after taking the Umbra out, she collapsed. The next day, the Twilights found out Backup's men were swarming the town of Camden. Now knowing that's where Chris and Mu were, Luke used his howls to call his brother to a hidden location that only the two of them were familiar with in that area. So now, they were on their way to save the two. Chris and Mu decided to wait near their meeting spot, and despite all the trouble, Mu was actually having a lot of fun right now. To her, it was like she was finally getting to see London, so she brightly thanked Chris for showing her around. Chris got a little shy, but told her once this whole crazy situation was over, he'd love to bring Mu back here, and she accepted his promise. At night, the Twilight crew split up, and Wayne shut down Backup's surveillance. It would take some time until Backup could have things running again, so now was their opportunity to regroup. But along the way, Vlad and Beilu encountered the Chimera. Vlad didn't want her to keep using her powers, but she took the beast head-on anyways, all while Hazen was watching them from afar. After Beilu defeated it, Vlad got a call from Luke, because he and Toru needed backup against the Genie Umbra. Unfortunately, while this was happening, Mu and Chris were surrounded by Backup's men, who poisoned Chris with wolfsbane. Mu didn't want Chris getting hurt anymore, so she gave in. But as they began taking Mu away, Chris tried to stop them, but was shot with silver bullets and he fell into the canal. Mu called out to Chris, but she was soon knocked out and taken away. After the gang finished off the genie, they were unfortunately too late, only seeing the helicopter leaving and Chris's blood all over the floor. Mu found herself in a dark room, where Chris told her everything was fine now, and there was nothing to worry about. However, this was an illusion via Backup's new version of the Magic Mirror app. He's sending false data not just to her vision, but to all 5 of her senses. And in her mind, she was embracing her wolf boy who wasn't there. The Twilight gang decided to hide out in a secluded location where there was no internet connection. They needed to hide from the midnight sun, otherwise, Beilu would end up fighting and exhausting herself further. They knew if she kept using the ring, she'd eventually turn into an Umbra. Back where Mu was, she saw her jack-o'-lantern, who Chris told her had died protecting him. But little did she know, she had the flame genie constrained in front of her. With Chris telling her to save her pumpkin, she began absorbing the genie into her, exactly what Backup wanted. We turned to Vlad checking on Beilu, who was eager to save Mu if they knew where she was. Vlad asked her to take off the ring, so that way she could power down, rest, and her hair would go back to normal. Beilu objected to the idea though, because if she did, she'd lose all her power she built up and would have to start over. Vlad then told her that Rijan had said the same thing once. She was a hero who never stopped fighting for the happiness of others, even allowing herself to become an Umbra because of it, and this resulted in her ultimately disappearing from everyone. Now, she was just a small legend that remained in the memories of only a few. Beilu wanted to know about how Vlad really felt about her, but since it was nearly 100 years ago, he claims to not exactly remember. But he does remember regretting his inability to save her, so that she could have been happy too. Beilu didn't believe her grandmother would have wanted that, and such a desire would have only made Vlad happy. She was tired of being compared to Rijan. She was tired of Vlad using her to rewrite the regret he felt from his experiences with her. But even so, he didn't want to lose Beilu now. He even kept his promise to Rijan and forbade himself from drinking blood. But he would lift that restriction and use his powers to control Beilu if it meant that he could save her. Beilu then challenged him. They both knew he couldn't beat her right now, especially with him weakened for not drinking blood for the last 100 years. He was distraught from her combative words, and she apologized. but she then ran out, wanting to be left alone, slamming the door into Luke's face on the way out. Luke then met with her later, placing a hat on Belu so she could cover her Umbra hair. He explained with Vlad's mistreatment towards her. Toru and Wayne were punishing him as they speak. The two began talking about Mu, and Luke told Belu to let him and the rest of the Twilight gang handle her rescue. He wasn't telling her this out of a sense of childish possessiveness like Vlad was. He just genuinely wanted Belu to have a happy college life with Mu as a human, for the two girls to visit the cafe as humans, and for all of them to be friends forever. He would like for Belu to bridge the gap between humans and Umbra. The two then came back, and Belu apologized for running off. She wanted to apologize to Vlad as well, but he was out buying groceries. Back in the illusion of the magic mirror, Mu was surrounded by more Umbra. Chris told her to save them and grant them peace, so she absorbed every single one of them. Backup was ecstatic. He'd never seen a human who could merge with Umbra so completely. Hazen spoke of this phenomena being more common 100 years ago, with shaman who could merge their consciousness with Umbra. He suspected that, like Belu, Mu might be related to Shah Rijan or himself. We then learned Backup's true desire out of all of this, simply to be rich and famous. He didn't want to be called Backup forever. He wanted to carve his existence in this world. But now, it was time for the two men to part ways. Backup desired to use Mu to erase all Umbra from this world, while Hazen desired to capture Belu and acquire the power of all Umbra. So now was the time for their two pawns to fight, where the winner could truly take all. And with Vlad showing security footage the word "tonight" as a challenge, the two knew this night would be their opportunity. The Twilight crew had their last meal together before the final battle. Belu was so happy to have some peaceful fun with her friends. At night, they saw a message on the side of the house that said, "Tower of London," so they began heading there. But by himself, Vlad asked Wayne to take care of Belu if all else failed, as his true self, the Lord of Gluttony. At the Tower of London, Backup and Heishin were prepping the area with plenty of Umbra. This place had a long history of wars and executions that had been conducted, probably the most cursed place in the city. As Mu descended down onto the floor below, Backup laughed at his praises towards her, believing no one could stop the monster he created. The Twilight crew began heading to their destination by boat. They met with Heishin at the entrance, who summoned his horde of Umbra to surround them on all ends. The boys began clearing a path, but no matter how many foes they defeated, the enemies seemed endless. So, Toru decided to go in and blow the door wide open for them, and throw some grenades to clear a path for his teammates who came running through. But now that he had done his part, it was time for him to go all out by removing his talisman. Belu, Vlad, and Luke kept running through, quickly moving past all their enemies. Getting to a more secluded path, Luke could hear his brother calling out to him, so he split up from the group. And inside another room, he found Chris passed out on the floor. With Luke checking up on him, Chris thanked his brother for choosing him over Belu, because this was all a trap to get Luke out of the picture. That Chris was merely an illusion set forth by Heishin, who knew Luke couldn't resist saving his brother. Belu asked Vlad if they should turn back to find Luke, but he was of the mindset that there was no option for them to turn back. However, they weren't expecting their next obstacle to be Shah Rijan herself. Vlad attempted to move towards her, but she told him to halt, because only her descendants were allowed to pass through. Belu was confused. Didn't her great-grandmother disappear? And Vlad confirmed that was correct. She disappeared so no one would see she'd become an Umbra. Rijan made an offer. Vlad hands over Belu, and she would come back to the Twilights. Rijan knew time had stopped since the moment Vlad lost her. She spoke sweet words to him, telling him she'd stay by his side this time. Vlad admitted he waited 100 years wishing to be reunited with her. He didn't know what to do with the immortal body he had, until he found Belu. Even though he found her to be immature, noisy, and rash, her soul was overflowing with hope, so he refused Rijan's offer. Rijan got battle ready, making Vlad chuckle, because it was clear she was a poor imitation of his old master. There's no way the real Rijan would show contempt for her beloved great-granddaughter. Belu thought Vlad loved Rijan so much it was infuriating, but she was going to leave fighting her to him, while she went ahead. Vlad quickly dealt with the fake Rijan and threw his phone at one of the Umbra, so Wayne could possess it. That way, Belu wouldn't be alone when she trekked forward. Heishin then appeared, so now Vlad had to deal with a real opponent. As the two began their hand-to-hand combat, Beilu became confronted with Mu, who was completely brainwashed. She tried to convince Mu to come back with her, but Mu could only see her as Jack the Ripper. Mu began her assault, but Wayne pushed Beilu out just in time, coming out from a crate above. Van Helsing made his return, and this was not in Backup's plans. Van kept dodging Mu's attacks because he'd never seriously hurt a human. He ran up the tower, catching up to Backup, and scolded him for trying to control people. However, with Mu appearing right behind Van, as she attacked, he covered Backup, attempting to protect him. But really only ended up getting the both of them killed with Mu's piercing strikes. Backup screamed in agony because he didn't want to die, but no matter what, he wasn't going to snap Mu out of her trance. With Mu powering up and unleashing some of her stored Umbra, Beilu started powering up, relying on the full power of her ring. Vlad was surprised that Heishin's technique was so good, but that would make sense because Heishin reveals himself to be the one who taught Rijan as her older brother. His aim is to strengthen Beilu and eat her liver to gain immortality. He had done it to a few magic users in the past, which was how he's prolonged his life for the last 100 years, but they were of a poorer quality and not related to him. Heishin threw several talismans, summoning an amalgamation of a creature to fight for him. Seeing Beilu, Chris told Mu she was a destructive hellfire that needed to be saved. Mu was losing her mind, attacking sporadically while Beilu dodged. This gave Wayne time to head up the tower to hopefully find the device that could release Mu from being possessed. Van, who was still barely hanging on, pointed Wayne towards Backup's terminal, where he needed to hack it to save Mu. With Vlad on the losing end versus Heishin, Toru appeared and fired a rocket. Then, Chris appeared with Luke as well. Luke had actually saved the both of them nearing their end. The boys wanted to take Heishin on though, and leave Vlad to helping Beilu and Mu out. Beilu continued to cut apart Mu's tendril-like appendages, coming right at her neck, but having to run away, not delivering the finishing blow. At the same time, Wayne got into the terminal, but needed 30 minutes to shut down the controlling application. He just needed Beilu to destroy the chip on the back of Mu's neck. Vlad then came to the rescue, walking forward, getting ensnared by Mu. As he was pulled into being absorbed, Beilu screamed out for him, but there was nothing she could do. Continuing the battle with Heishin, the three boys finally did enough damage to expend his life force. Having absorbed Vlad, Mu began going for Beilu, but suddenly started getting slashed apart. This was due to Vlad, and he came out perfectly fine, albeit exhausted. He even got the chip off of her, freeing her mind. But now, all the Umbra was spilling out of Mu, and Vlad was out of commission for the time being, so it was up to Beilu to handle the rest. She then delivered one decisive blow, eliminating all of the Umbra. Heishin tried making his escape, having shaved 50 years off of his life from the fight he was just in, but he became distraught, seeing the Lord of Gluttony. Heishin began laughing, knowing he'd met his end as he was cut apart. The Lord of Gluttony then appeared on the scene where Beilu and Mu were exhausted. He was hungry, seeing two delicious snacks of power in front of him. With a few more seconds of consciousness left though, he let Vlad choose whose powers he should eat. So Vlad told him to eat Mu, to release her from the curse of her unwanted power. Vlad then grabbed onto Beilu, telling her to come back to Café Forbidden, telling her to come back to him. Beilu then told him if she stopped being human, if he wanted, she would be his, and then passed out as Vlad moved in for a bite. With the world now being saved, the Twilights continued their usual work at the cafe, where Detective Gregory and Mu frequented. When Beilu arrived, Vlad was happy, but then turned to scold her for being 20 minutes late for work. She wondered why he was nagging her. Her class ran late is all. While the two bickered, the rest of the crew saw pictures of Chris visiting Rome. He was traveling around the world, trying to figure out what he wanted to do. On another day, Beilu was running in a hurry because she was late for class. She stopped by a little girl who claimed to have gotten lost looking for her aunt. Beilu then offered the girl a card for the cafe, telling her the guys there would help her out if she needed it, and then continued running to class. The little girl waved while wishing Beilu a happy life as her other self. What a nice end to the series. But come on, no kisses anywhere? Subscribe to the channel for more. Also, watch this next video. It's me, ComfyTea. I'll see you all in the next one.